Number 10. Louise. Louise is not a major character in terms of being a huge mutant or key villain to mutants in the current series, but she is someone who will likely end up becoming a close friend and ally of Wolverine's. She first appeared in issue number 1 of the newest Wolverine series that started in 2020. I actually remember reading that first issue when I was in New York City right before the world went crazy. Oh my, what a time. Memories. Louise is a member of the Night Guard, and while she dropped off after issue 1, as we keep coming back to Dracula and the vampire nations going ons in the Wolverine series, she too has resurfaced. Louise was given a suit by Forge to help slow her transformation into a vampire after she and her Night Guard were attacked and either killed or turned. She once more teamed up with Logan as they went head to head with Dracula and his loyal subjects, and likely she'll be back again as this slow burning story continues to be developed. In fact, I think this is going to be like the big story before the end of this current Wolverine series, whenever we get there. Number 9. Cyclops Lass. So Cyclops Lass might not be one of the most important characters on this list, but I still think she is a character you should get to know because, well, she's just a cool character. I really like Cyclops Lass. Cyclops Lass is Beatrice Buddy Bartholomew and is the leader of the Children of the Atom. By the way, it took me a minute to realize when I first heard of this fan-composed mutant-inspired teen hero team's name that their group name was another phrase used for mutants and even the X-Men back in the day. It's pretty cool when you realize that. Neat stuff. Cyclops Lass appears to have powers similar to the X-Men member and often leader, Cyclops, but in reality we learned that it was actually alien tech which gave her team their powers, allowing them to appear like mutants and like some of their favorite X-Men members. Still, Buddy is a cool character, and while Children of the Atom has ended, I do hope we get to see more of its team members. Buddy made her first cameo appearance in Marvel's Voices issue number 1 and her full appearance in Children of the Atom issue number 1. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, if you want more mutant lists, please let us know by hitting that like button. It really does help us out at the channel, and it lets us know that you want more X lists, which honestly I like giving you all the X-Men things, so yes, let's do it. Number 8. COSMAR. COSMAR is one of the new mutants, if that makes sense. She first appeared in issue number 9 of the newest series from 2020. Currently there are 2 different groups of new mutants in that series, the one based on the mutant island nation of Krakoa, who are truly feeling those outcast vibes right now, and currently are like the Shadow King's lost mutant kids, and the other traditional new mutant team who is more focused on space adventures and other international exploits. When COSMAR's powers first manifested, it resulted in the death of her parents. Her powers cause her to suck people into her nightmares, as she creates a reality warping sphere surrounding her. All those who touch or interact with it run the risk of being sucked in. And I believe Forge actually made her a suit as well, as Forge is just making everybody little things to help them with their powers, to help her sort of control those powers so that they wouldn't be so disastrous. Number 7. Gimmick. Gimmick is a new mutant who first appeared and had her powers manifest in Children of the Atom. She was the one member of the team who actually ended up making it to Krakoa due to the fact that she was a real mutant, in addition to also being a major fangirl of the X-Men. But aside from her being a mutant, Carmen Cruz is also good friends with the fellow Children of the Atom, with Cyclops Lass, aka Buddy, probably being her best friend on the team and also her secret crush who she's in love with. Another thing that I love about Carmen is that she also is the person that makes all the costumes on the team, and she's super into cosplay, which I just think is like super cool and super cute. We don't have a lot of characters in the comics that are cosplayers, so I really liked that element. Gimmick's powers appeared initially to be similar to Gambit's, but this was all done using alien technology. In reality, when Carmen's mutant powers manifested, it was revealed that they were shapeshifting in nature and also granted her a healing factor. Carmen made her first cameo appearance in 2020 in Marvel's Voices issue 1, but would appear fully in the first issue of Children of the Atom the following year in 2021. Also, when she did have her Gambit powers, it was pretty cool because she was like throwing basically little like clothing pins, if that makes sense, at people, which I love. Number 6. Maxime and Manon. Maxime and Manon are relatively new characters and mutants who appeared within the last year, but we also now potentially have a different version of them in the current X books. They're likely from a different continuity due to what we learned during the Dawn of X period of the current line. There's like a version of them I think that's like 616, and then there's a version of them that doesn't actually have a reality number officially yet, but yes. Maxime and Manon, as we see them in the current timeline, are a brother and sister who together can heavily manipulate and warp the minds of others. Maxime can manipulate the emotions of his target, and Manon can manipulate and alter their memories, making the two a powerful duo when working in tandem. Maxime and Manon once served Ahab, being brainwashed into using their powers to make hounds for him. However, they would later be freed by Jean Grey, and Cable would convince her to look after them. Maxime and Manon are currently relevant because in the New Mutants series, they use their powers to make two humans attack one another and fight to the death, which is against Krakoan law. Woo! However, nothing seems to have come from them taking this extreme action just yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if it comes around at some point. Number 5. Bae the Blood Moon. Bae the Blood Moon is an awesome new character who made her first appearance in the Ten of Swords event back in the second main book from the event, Ten of Swords Stasis. She was one of the Arakko mutants who was called to compete in the Otherworld tournament, fighting to represent her nation. However, her fight actually ended up being a marriage. Basically, the Otherworld tournament was gloriously weird because it was being led by Saturnine, so we had traditional sword fights combined with lots of different kinds of battles, including puzzle solving duels, food eating competitions, dance-offs, and even an arranged marriage. However, it also all worked out as Cypher and Bae were seemingly both enamored with the other, as they were both masters of language and communication, but who struggled to understand one another, which fascinated them both, especially Cypher. They were both married and were each awarded a point, as it was considered a shared victory for both sides. Also, the art in the issue of Excalibur where they get married is just so good. It's so great. I love it. Number 4. Chen Zhao. Chen is not a mutant, nor is she an ally to mutant kind. She is just the opposite, their enemy. After coming up against the Marauders, trying to inspire mutant hate in her people as a public figurehead, billionaire, and anti-mutant activist, she ended up allying herself with Ham and his Verendi. Still hell-bent on destroying mutant kind's reputation as heroes, and now especially focused on doing harm to the band of mutant heroes that we know as the Marauders. Chen Zhao made her first appearance back in 2019 in Marauders issue 1, which once again, if you haven't read any of this comic, why not go back and start with that first issue in Chen's first appearance. Currently, Chen is Hominis Verandi's White Bishop, and she's definitely a villain that I think is going to be more prominent and keep getting like more badass, which I love. Number 3. Dolores Ramirez. Dolores Ramirez is another non-mutant, but someone who is a very important character within and around the X-Men universe currently. She is the head of the X-Desk, and no, I don't mean that she worked with Jonathan Hickman to bring our current line of X-books to life. Within Earth 616, she is the one who presides over the United States government X-Desk, which monitors, keeps tabs on, and ultimately kind of spies on the mutant nation of Krakoa and its major players and political stratagems. The X-Desk is a department within the CIA. Dolores once offered to help fellow CIA agent Jeff Bannister, ally of Wolverine, who had been working with him, but he turned her down. Dolores was also one of the lucky few to get an invite to the Hellfire Gala and met with Storm in secret during her first appearance in Marauders issue 11, where she was rewarded for leaking some important information about poisoned medicine to the mutants. So while she's watching them, she also kind of seems pretty friendly. Number 2. Arakko. Arakko is both an island and a mutant, just like Krakoa. In fact, there was a time when both Krakoa and Arakko were joined together, but years ago they were separated. Arakko made their first appearance in Powers of X issue number 4, and later on we learn of all that went on there with the island, including the mutants who inhabited it and their connection to a vastly important mutant, Apocalypse. Following the Ten of Swords event, Arakko attempted to reunite with Krakoa, but both islands decided they were no longer really interested in one another, and the time had basically changed them. They reluctantly rejoined until a more suitable option was found for Arakko and the mutants of Krakoa. In planet-size X-Men, some of the mutants banded together under the direction of Magneto to terraform Mars and move Arakko and its inhabitants, the mutants of Arakko, to the now alive planet. That's what happens when you terraform a planet, you bring it to life again. I actually didn't know that Mars was considered a dead planet until I read Planet-Size X-Men, and I was like, wow, I feel like I'm also learning some science facts, which is great. Number 1. Genesis. One of the most badass of all the new characters we've gotten recently in the world of X-Men. Genesis is the long-lost wife of Apocalypse, who also was one of the main leaders of Arakko. She ended up fighting against Annihilation and becoming its new host in order to save her people. Uniting both the Amenthi and the mutants teachings of Arakko. Donning the mask, she became a leader of the Amenthi demon army, but also lost a part of herself in the process, as the Annihilation mask possessed and corrupted her. However, during the Ten of Swords tournament, she fought against her husband Apocalypse, who managed to free her from the Golden Helm of Annihilation, taking it for himself. But Apocalypse's will proved strong enough to resist its influence, and the mask was then transformed by Saturnine into a much less influential and corrupting staff, which was then gifted to Genesis. Genesis made her first full appearance in the 2019 X-Men series in issue number 12, but we wouldn't learn that she was Annihilation until much later. Number 10. Skin. I love me some Gen X mutants, which is why you know I need to talk about Skin on this list. Skin is a mutant whose mutation is basically just a bunch of extra skin. In the comics, it actually took a while for Angelo to be able to embrace his abilities, as he basically resented his powers and being a mutant. However, as time went on, he came to accept them and even became quite good at utilizing his extra skin and using it as a cool power. He could even use it to change the appearance of his shape and face, becoming somewhat of a shapeshifter. While Angelo Espinosa can stretch his skin, it should be noted that his skeleton does not change, making his power kind of a weird and unique one. Skin is also known for having literally thick skin that is more durable than most, as well as more elastic. Number 9. Husk. Paige Guthrie might not be one of the main heroes that you think of when you think X-Men, but for a time she was actually a close-knit part of that team, and even had a controversial romantic relationship with fellow X-Men member Angel, who, even though we don't talk about him as much, is one of the original members, so yeah. I even thought of putting him on this list just because we never talk about him, but I was like, wow, that would be mad disrespect to Angel, so I couldn't do it. I can't lie, I'm actually really excited for the X-Corp series just because I am ready for Angel's return to the spotlight. Paige's powers are fairly unique in that she can shed her skin to reveal a new layer of skin made out of a different material beneath it. This new outer layer of skin can be made of anything that she wants it to be, such as wood, rubber, or even diamonds. Diamond skin is so cool. Just taking a page of Emma Frost's book there. Love it. Number 8. Hellion. So yeah, the early 2000s saw us go through a mutant boom. A boom that likely led to the events of House of M, which was probably used from a practical standpoint to kind of remove a good number of mutants, because it was just getting, well, it was getting so out of hand with keeping track of all of these different mutants. We had so many. Too many, maybe. Just kidding, you can never have too many mutants. Hellion was a part of this boom, and he took inspiration for his codename from his mentor Emma Frost's fallen group of mutants, the Hellions. Julian Keller is likely a mutant associated with the X-Men that we don't talk about as often because, well, he's kind of a jerk, and he's not as much of a lovable jerk as someone like Sunspot, so yeah. Julian possesses a unique version of telekinesis in that his powers are far more advanced and allow him to take control on a seemingly molecular level of different objects. They also come with a super cool color as well. Everything he does is like green with his powers. Unfortunately, when emotions get in the way of these powers, this level of telekinesis results in him sometimes combusting objects by accident or simply in anger. Hellion has made a return in Krakoa and has appeared in a few comics, but hasn't become a main member of any of the prominent teams featured there just yet. I personally think it'd be cool to see Hellion on the Hellions, but I don't know if he's messed up enough to be on the Hellions. Number 7. Mercury. Mercury is another mutant to come from the bunch that Hellion was a part of. Julian was actually her first friend that she made when she arrived at the Xavier Institute. Mercury's, or Cecily Kincaid's, parents had sent their daughter there after her powers first manifested, ashamed that she was a mutant. Eventually, they would actually end up disowning her after they themselves were pulled into a mutant conflict. Mercury's powers allow her to turn her skin into liquid metal, which she can then control, reform, and use to shapeshift with. This form is of course made up of non-toxic mercury, which is where she gets her codename from. Mercury was also one of the few mutants to keep her powers following the events of M-Day. In fact, I have quite a few of those on my list. Not all of them, but a few of them. Number 6. Darwin. Darwin has some of the coolest abilities, and yet he isn't often easily recognized as being one of the main members of the X-Men, even though he's been a part of the team for quite some time in the comics. For a long time, he was actually stuck bonded to Vulcan, as he was part of one of the first teams of X-Men Xavier and Moira ever had. I don't know if we called that team the X-Men, but they're basically like another squad of X-Men in my mind, so. He was part of the first team sent in to rescue the X-Men from Krakoa. Though we wouldn't find out about that team in terms of comic book book history till many years after the events of the X-Men's printed fight against the mutant living island. Darwin's powers allow him to evolve as needed to ensure his survival. This basically makes him almost immortal, as he can evolve to resolve almost any life-threatening situation. Recently, in the current X-Men run in issue number 5, this is why Darwin was chosen to be one of the team members to be sent into the vault after Serafina, as it wasn't known how long the team sent in would be locked within that place where time moves more quickly in comparison to Earth. I feel like they also just came out recently, but I haven't read that issue yet, so no spoilers. Number 5. Trance. Trance is another mutant who is affiliated with the X-Men and even tried out to become an X-Men in training under Emma Frost, following the events of House of M. She was one of the lucky few, or unlucky few I guess depending on your perspective, to remain powered. Hope Abbott, or Trance, possesses the power to leave her physical body, becoming ghost-like in appearance on panel, but in reality she's just astral projecting. In other words, she's not as powerful as some other mutants who are able to astral project as, you know, part of their larger set of powers, generally being telepathic or telekinetic in origin. But hey, not everyone can astral project, so I still think this is pretty cool. I also like when people don't have like crazy awesome powerful things and then you still have to see them like try to figure out, how do I use this in a way that's cool and, you know, good, so I can be on the same level. I think that's cooler to read, but that's just me. Number 4. STACY-X. Although STACY-X hasn't made a ton of appearances, she is a memorable character due to her, interesting and sensual abilities. Former abilities, I guess I should say. We don't really know if she has been returned to the status of a mutant, but we do know that she has joined the mutant nation of Krakoa now. So considering that when we last saw her she was missing those abilities that she used to have in her former appearance, I assume that she has participated in the Crucible, was killed by the mutant formerly known as Apocalypse, and has been resurrected as her former self. But also, there are a lot of people in line to just be returned to us, and I'm sure there's a lot of people in line to participate in the Crucible to earn their powers back, so who knows? Who knows where she is in that long line. Also, Apocalypse is no longer on the island following the events of Ten of Swords, so there is that. I don't know who's running the Crucible now. Who is like the replacement Apocalypse. STACY-X was part of the X-Men for a brief period after being rescued by them from her place of work, which was attacked and destroyed by the Church of Humanity. STACY-X used her powers at her place of employment to help make clients who came through feel good and grant them sensations of pleasure. She can also use her pheromone powers in combat to make her opponents feel not so good, manipulating their bodily functions. She makes you feel sick. Blech. Number 3. Loa. Loa is one of the resurrected mutants to rejoin us on Krakoa, reborn again. While you may not know her as well as some of the others, she has a long and storied past with both the X-Men, her fellow mutants, good pals Rockslide and Match, and even with Namor. In fact, Namor was the one who came to save the day after she first discovered her powers. Loa's abilities allow her to pass through other matter and in so doing destroy it on a molecular level. She discovered she had these powers when her dad was attacked by a shark while they were surfing together, and she passed through it, destroying it. Namor would later come to her and her father's rescue before the situation could escalate, and it was later revealed that her grandmother was actually an old friend of Namor's. Since then, she also gained the ability to breathe underwater after being exposed to the Atlantean amulet. The amulet also allows Loa's physiology to adapt so that she can survive in the depths of the ocean easily. Number 2. Match. You might know the Pyros, but do you know Match? Match is Ben Hamill, one of the mutants to appear in the new X-Men series, but making his first appearance in New Mutants. His powers are pyrokinesis, hence his name. It basically gives him control over fire, which he himself can generate, and also helps to make him immune to fire attacks and heat. Match is now not as hot on the radar, but was for a time the leader of the X-Men adjacent team, the Paragon Squad. He also participated in a competition for a place on Emma Frost's X-Men team, and has attended both the Xavier Institute and the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning. I'm not sure if it's of or for, because of feels weird to me, but I think it is right. It's of or for, it's one of those. Number 1. Lifeguard. Lifeguard is Heather Cameron, a mutant who, as a response to life-threatening danger, gains the skills and powers necessary to save those lives around her. This power, or powers, not only works for her in regards to saving others, but also is a reactive power that applies to saving her own life, meaning she can get out of pretty much almost any kind of dangerous situation that she puts herself in. Before Lifeguard was her codename, it was actually her profession, as she worked as a lifeguard in Australia where she lived with her brother Davis. Eventually it was also implied in the comics that she has unknown Shi'ar heritage. We've seen her resurface in Dawn of X, popping up in Krakoa at the Green Lagoon bar, but it would also be super cool to see her play more of a prominent role at some point in the comics, as her powers are pretty neat and definitely super useful. But maybe too powerful? Maybe that's why we haven't seen her as much. Like Hope.
Kicking off the list at number 10. Juggernaut. Kane Marco made his first comic book appearance in X-Men issue 12, when Kane and Charles Xavier were serving together in the same unit, but when Kane was under fire, he ran off to take cover in a nearby cave. The cave was actually home to the lost temple of Sidorak. So Kane grabbed this glowing ruby from the lap of an idol. Apparently he's never seen an Indiana Jones movie. He read the inscription. Apparently he's never seen a horror movie. And he possessed the power of the Crimson Bands of Sidorak, becoming a human Juggernaut. Then an explosion went off, and then Kane the Juggernaut was now trapped under the rubble, and Xavier just took off. So after Kane dug himself out, he destroyed an entire village, with the previous man who had held the Juggernaut mantle, Jin Taiko, being destroyed as well. Now at one point he joined the X-Men and accepted Xavier's offer to live at the Xavier school. After a young boy he befriended named Sammy meets his fate, Kane embraces the Sidorak energies once again and went back to his villain ways. And before we go on to number 9, if you guys could go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be great. It helps the studio out quite a bit. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for watching. Now back to this X-Men list. Number 9, Mystique. Raven Darkholme made her first comic book debut in Miss Marvel issue 16 back in 1978. So she's been around for quite a while, although most of her history is quite secretive. Her powers are quite interesting and first came to be when she was around 12 years old. Now one of those powers being of course that she can metamorph. So she can shapeshift into literally anybody, doesn't matter what size, age, gender, whatever the case. She's so good at shapeshifting and becoming somebody else that she can even copy your retina patterns and of course your fingerprints. So she can definitely get into your phone in numerous ways. She constantly betrays the X-Men. She's so flippy floppy. She joins the team for selfish reasons and then she leaves all over again. It's part of her thing. Number 8, Colossus. Making his first debut in Giant Size X-Men issue 1, Colossus grew up in Russia with his brother Miko and sister Alina. And when a runaway tractor was about to take out Alina, he saved her life with his powers. And then of course that got the attention of Charles Xavier. So he joined Charles in his school, and then when the legacy virus took the life of Alina, that plus the fact that he was stuck in this giant metal mode, stuck in the X-Men mansion, it was his mental breaking point. He tipped to the dark side. He left and figured the best place to be was with the Acolytes, with Magneto and Avalon. Number 7, Wolverine. Wolverine has had a pretty crazy past, so it's no surprise that he's gone down a few dark roads in his time. In the movie Logan, for example, we see two Wolverines battle it out, and it's so gory and so wonderful. But in the comic Age of Apocalypse, Logan goes from being an X-Men to the Horseman of Death. Yeah, Apocalypse actually had Wolverine square up against Sabretooth in order to see who becomes this new Horseman. Wolverine came out on top and Apocalypse restored the adamantium to his skeleton. Upgrade time, let's do it. And to make matters worse, Apocalypse replaced Wolverine with a scroll so the X-Men wouldn't notice. Now of course there's many more X-Men who have become Horsemen of the Apocalypse, such as number 6, Gambit. Making his first appearance in Uncanny X-Men 266, Remy LeBeau was a mutant child who was kidnapped from the hospital by members of the New Orleans Thieves Guild. So off the bat, not a happy start to his life. They referred to him as the White Devil. So before he joined the X-Men, he had a pretty shady past, and after he had become a member, it was revealed that before he had worked for Mr. Sinister, and Gambit was actually the one who was responsible for putting the Marauders into the New York sewers where the Mutant Massacre happened. So, okay. He was also one of Apocalypse's 4 horsemen, like I said previously. He took the place of the Horseman Death, and he even refused any sedation during this process in order to make sure Apocalypse doesn't toy with his mind. What a badass. Dude's hardcore. His original plan during this was to keep an eye on Apocalypse from the inside, but the transformation did alter his intentions as well. He ended up rescuing his old self when he remembered his love for Rogue, and he claimed he was both Death and Gambit at the same time. What a troubled man. Number 5, Bishop. Lucas Bishop. He is a time traveler from a dystopian future, and his goal was to travel back in time to the past in order to stop an unknown traitor amongst the X-Men. Interesting, very interesting. So he's come from that dark future to change it. Sounds like a good way to mix things up, that's for sure. Now this was when most of the mutant population is depowered by the Scarlet Witch. Then the child Hope was born, the first mutant born since. Well, it turns out that this kid is the reason Bishop is going back. See, that kid would end up taking millions of lives in the 6-second war. So Bishop tries to take out the child, which makes him the traitor all along. Time travel hurts my head, oh my god. So Cable, another time traveler from a different future, protects Hope. Bishop fails at taking out Hope, but he does take down Cable, creating a new future where Cable is remembered as a hero for protecting the child, and Bishop was remembered as the villain. That's tragic and also very confusing. Number 4, Archangel. Warren Worthington III. He started out as the accustomed hero known as the Avenging Angel. And then once Xavier got his attention, he recruited him as the third of the 5 founding members of the X-Men, alongside Cyclops, Iceman, Beast, and Marvel Girl. He developed a pair of feathered wings that grew out of his back, giving him the ability, of course, to fly. He became a member of X-Factor alongside other X-Men, but he lost his wings thanks to Cameron Hodge. See, Apocalypse saw this and he took advantage of the hero. He brainwashed him and turned him into Archangel, the first horseman of death in the comics. He eventually broke free of Apocalypse's control, but over the years he would flip-flop back and forth into the evil hands of Apocalypse. He at one point actually had almost replaced Apocalypse after his death. Yeah, he's a force you do not want to mess with. Number 3, Cyclops. Scott Summers has been a leader of the X-Men since the beginning. He carries the knowledge that Xavier gifted him when he was a teenager. He was always struggling to control his powers growing up, and his history is pretty tragic. So when Scott and Emma became the new co-headmasters of the school, Cyclops led the X-Men, and he was doing a pretty good job. He was working to destroy this negative image that the public gave the X-Men. And as time went on, the X-Men name was being tarnished, so he thought it was best to separate mutants from humanity. Yeah, he thought he'd separate them and then rule the mutants on an island nation known as Utopia. Magneto even gives him props for uniting all the mutants. I mean, this is a big deal for him. This starts going south in the Schism storyline, where Cyclops sends out child soldiers on these assassination missions. He has the mindset that mutants need to train to be soldiers rather than students, but they're like 12 years old, so it's like, okay. Eventually the team gets divided and Scott ends up taking on the powers of the Phoenix Force, fighting the Avengers and taking out Xavier, resulting in him being imprisoned. Number 2, Magneto. Making his first appearance in X-Men 1 back in 1963, Magneto is a mutant with the ability to generate and control magnetic fields. He's a master of magnetism. He was a close friend with Professor X, but of course they came to a disagreement over the idea that humans and mutants could coexist peacefully. Like I just mentioned, he was a fan of when they got divided. He gave Scott Summers props for doing this, so he's clearly on board with this idea. And obviously his horrible childhood makes a fair point for said argument. He always believed that mutants were superior to humans. He was the one who created the Brotherhood of Mutants and the Acolytes. He worked with the X-Men before. See, when Professor X needed to leave Earth, Magneto stepped in to take his place and teach his students how to use their powers. After this, he became a hero in a way. He was guiding these new mutants. But again, he's one of those villains that constantly flips back and forth in the comics, and I'm really hoping he somehow is the one responsible for all this madness in WandaVision. After all, now that Quicksilver is somehow in the picture from the Fox universe, one can only hope we'll see some more X-Men, and one can only wish that Magneto will come through and maybe give his daughter a little talking to. And finally, number 1, Jean Grey. The Dark Phoenix, of course, she is number 1. Jean Grey is an Omega level mutant born with telekinetic and telepathic powers. She was also one of the OG members of the X-Men. Now, seeing the potential in Jean's strength, the Phoenix Force attached itself to her while she was in danger during a space mission with the Fantastic Four. It's X-Men 101. Like literally, the issue is X-Men 101. Dark Phoenix has now entered the chat. Uh-oh. So much power. Okay, this dark, powerful cosmic force started to change her for the worse. She ended up destroying a solar system that, kind of killed billions. And then she took her own life in order to keep the universe safe. Now, a few years later, it was revealed that it wasn't actually the Jean Grey that had died, No, just the Phoenix as a separate entity that had taken over her mind and all that jazz. The Phoenix Saga is one of the biggest transformations to an X-Men member, and we even got to see all this go down on screen. Now, of course, we'd have to put her at number 1. Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Multiple Man. James Madrox. He made his first comic book appearance in Giant Size Fantastic Four, issue 4, and right off the bat, he seems very soft-spoken. He seems very gentle. I mean, the Thing is yelling at him, and he's literally like, "Why do you reject me? Why?" Like, he's so almost poetic in a way. And then when the Thing goes to clobber him, bam, there's multiple more men. Now, he wasn't used very much in the X-Men, but he spent most of his days with X-Factor. But this guy is underrated. His powers may seem kind of weak compared to somebody like Jean Grey, but these duplicates can each make a duplicate.
Let me try something. I'm Mr. Meeseeks. Look at me. I'm Mr. Meeseeks. I'm Mr. Meeseeks. Look at me. Hi.
At one point, this guy had 40 of him running around town. 40. Now, the duplicates think, they feel, and they act independently, but they're guided by the original James Madrox. In a way, they're guided. They kind of know what to do. Each of these duplicates manifests one aspect of James' personality, and the longer the time away, the more those traits become extreme. And if one of these duplicates passed away, he can sense that the general area where the body is, which is like the saddest radar ever. This guy could take over the world if he wanted. It would be like that scene from The Matrix, but with more monologues probably. And before we go on to this list of X-Men you probably wouldn't expect to be that powerful, guys, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, just right there, just give it a little tap, and it helps our studio out quite a bit. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for watching. Let's get back to the list. Lickety split. Number 9, Darwin. We saw this next mutant for a hot minute in X-Men First Class. He was played by Eddie Gathegi, who unfortunately didn't survive too long. See, he threw his life down on the line in order to protect his fellow X-Men. And this was still in the early days too. What a champ. He first showed up in the comics in 2005 with X-Men Deadly Genesis issue 2. Armando Munoz looked a lot different than we saw on screen as well. Since he was 4 years old, he was bald, his arms were super long, and his eyes were changing. He sure looks a little bit different than the young, handsome actor that we saw in the movie. His ability comes in handy a lot actually, more so in the X-Men movies. See, in the comics, he's practically immortal. His ability once allowed him to survive Hela's death touch. I mean, it's a little bit different than the last time we saw him, that's for sure. Number 8, Caliban. An albino mutant and former member of the Morlocks, Caliban made his first comic book appearance in Uncanny X-Men 148. So he has the ability to track down any mutant. He actually sacrifices himself in the movie Logan, where Stephen Merchant played him. He was also in X-Men Apocalypse for a bit too, played by a different actor. He was played by Tomas Lamarcus. He was originally an ally to the X-Men, but once he became a tracker for Apocalypse in X-Factor issue 24, titled The Fall of the Mutants. So he's pretty powerful, and he's done a lot of cool stuff too. He may seem like a gentle, lanky, pale man, but when Caliban is stressed out in the comics, he gains 2 additional powers: super strength and fear absorption. So if you put him in a corner, he'll be able to absorb the psionic energy in your fear and use it to power himself up even more. Number 7, GLOB Herman, aka Robert Herman, although GLOB is much more fun to say. He made his debut in New X-Men issue 117, and he grew up with a father who despised mutants, so already he's off to a pretty rocky start. So when GLOB mutated, his father was just not on board, so his mother drove GLOB out to Westchester and just left him for Professor X. Like you leave a baby at a fire station. It's just like, yep, here you go, your problem now. This mutation was interesting. So his skin was this transparent living wax, which he's able to maintain being on fire, which is pretty amazing off the bat. You can light him on fire and he's good to go. That's amazing. He runs with the New Mutants now, and although his name is silly and he's literally a glob, he can also possess powers of super strength and super speed, despite how he may look. So he can get hit by these massive bombs like it's nothing, then he can fight whoever launched that bomb with ease. The X-Men literally once used him as a heat shield once. They strapped GLOB to the front of their ship, and it didn't seem pleasant for a man GLOB, but he was good. He didn't die or anything. He was just, he had to rest for a bit. Number 6, Toad. When you think of the name Toad in relation to a superhero, you're gonna picture something pretty silly in your head. And Mortimer Toynbee isn't that far off from what you'd think. He made his first appearance in Uncanny X-Men issue 4. So he hops around, which seems silly, but his legs are so strong that he can leg press 3 tons. And it's not just his legs that are strong, his upper half possesses superhuman strength as well. His arms can lift about 1 ton. He also has flexible bone structure, regenerative healing factor, infrared vision, and the best part, his 30-foot long tongue can also act as a whip. and it can secrete venom that can give him mind control over your body, and his saliva is acid as well. Number 5, Wither. Making his first appearance in New Mutants Volume 2, Issue 3, Kevin Ford grew up thinking that he was cursed, or he was the most unlucky person ever, one or the two. See, his mutant power started manifesting, and then he noticed it first in his plants, and then he noticed it in his clothes, and then he noticed it in people. So what would happen is his plants would wither. They would wither and they would die. And then his clothes were starting to decay as well. So once his father figures out this mutation, he tries to calm him down, but coming into contact with him, obviously the inevitable happens. He sees the world in this lifeless or decaying way now. See, it's part of this mutation. He can disintegrate all forms of organic matter just by one touch. Whatever he touches withers, so now we get his name. It turns into dust within seconds, whatever it is. Now this seems boring, I guess. When you think of it in like a cinematic battle, it's not too exciting. But this guy can take out an entire elite squad just by touching them. I mean, realistically, just send him in always. No one's gonna expect it. All you have to do is get him to fist bump everybody and then bam, just like that. No more bad guys. Number 4, Nocturne. This next one, she comes from Earth 2182, where she's the daughter of Nightcrawler and Scarlet Witch. Now, she's got her dad's looks, unfortunately. She's blue, furry, she's got 3 fingers and 3 toes. She's got a tail and yellow eyes and pointed ears. Now, sure, she looks like she can take out any bad guy, like she looks like an alien. So she possesses the powers of both of her parents. She can blast off energy bolts, she can climb walls, but what makes her even more powerful is that she has the ability to possess others for 12 hours, or 1 lunar cycle. But once that timer is up, the victim is just completely out of it for 24 hours, just comatose. This super offspring packs a super punch, that's for sure. Number 3, Tattoo. Christine Cord made her comic book debut in the new X-Men issue 126. She was a student of the Xavier Institute, and she's known as Tattoo, well, because her mutation allows her to display messages or designs on her skin, and she can phase through matter, which is also kind of fun. She's pretty awesome. I mean, when you first think of her, you may just think of the skin messages and be like, oh, whatever. Maybe she's a spy. Maybe she can be like, send help and then use her skin. Cool, that's good. But check this out. Tattoo actually phased her hand into Cyclops' head once and told him that if she becomes solid, he would not survive to see the end of it. How awesome is that? But she sadly lost her powers during the events of M-Day, but if you ever ran into Christine again, she would probably surprise you with her new ability. When she was released from jail, she joined the New Warriors and was given her own Stiltman armor, becoming Longstrike. So bam! 2 in 1. Talk about underrated. Number 2, Banshee. The Screaming Banshee. Okay, he made his first appearance in X-Men issue 28. Sean Cassidy was born as the heir to the castle and estate of Cassidy Keep, Ireland. Now, Professor Xavier asked him to join the X-Men at the same time as Thunderbird, and they both stayed as members of the new X-Men. Now, he went on to train the new generation of X-Men and Generation X, but he sadly lost his life during Deadly Genesis when he was trying to stop Blackbird from crashing when it was taken over. So when you think of an X-Men who screams so loud he can hurt people, it's impressive on its own, sure, but his screams are actually stronger than we really think. His screams can actually break through an inch of steel. And with these wings that Professor X developed for him, he's able to harness this power and use his screams as energy to help him fly. So he can do so much more with his voice as well. He can tighten the sound waves around himself to make a sonic shield, and he can influence your subconscious by changing the tones and vibrations of his voice. He can literally change your mind. How awesome is that? What do you mean you want a divorce? And finally, number 1, we have my favorite on the list, Bailey Hoskins. Okay, I have to talk about this poor kid. Okay, strongest X-Men you wouldn't expect? Yeah, that is for sure Bailey Hoskins. The only appearance of this kid is in the 2016 miniseries X-Men, Worst X-Man Ever, which is a pretty cruel name. He was a student at Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, and his power is pretty spectacular. He can self-detonate, he can make himself explode, and you would never expect it just by looking at him. I mean, come on. He reminds me of Hogarth from the Iron Giant. He's such a cute kid. The thing is, he can only use this fantastic ability once. And his last issue in the comics was X-Men Worst X-Man Ever, issue 5.